Chapter 331, God's Enemy 4. The noise of the battlefield died down for a moment at my cry. The struggle between giant soldier Heracles and giant soldier Pluto. Even the constellations in the channel seemed nervous at the summoning of the weapon. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is wondering what your weapon is. Many constellations are curious about steel sword. My empty hand still wasn't filled. Why didn't it come? I looked back and reflexively activated Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. It was to grasp the situation of the battlefield. Then I heard the thoughts of characters with a high level of understanding. Steel sword, I seem to have heard that somewhere before. A person who uses the sword. What? Kim Dok-ya is an idiot. The fourth wall's mocking words were heard in my head. I belatedly noticed. Lee Hyun-sung's nickname was still Pure Steel. Steel sword, nice name. It was called by Dr. SSI. He must be a great person. Lee Hyun-sung was looking this way while fighting Jason. I shouted towards Lee Hyun-sung, Hyun-sung SSI, come quickly. Huh, you were talking about me. Hurry, you idiot, I'll cover this place. Han Soo-young shouted and Lee Hyun-sung gave up his showdown with Jason. The Stigma Great Mountain push was triggered and Jason flew backwards. No, use it earlier if he had that power. I didn't know how much stronger Lee Hyun-sung had become in the last 3 years, but he was more useful than expected. However, I'm not Steel Sword. You will be called that from today. What should I do? I quickly grabbed and swung Lee Hyun-sung. Quack. Ares regrouped and swung Heracles' bat. It was a tremendous blow that combined giant soldier Heracles' story mixed with Ares' story. It was a destructive force that could crush Nemia's lion in one blow. I swung Lee Hyun-sung at Ares. Dr. SSI, it isn't possible. It's fine, trust yourself. Along with the sound of waves, particles of water turned into fog. In the fog, Lee Hyun-sung slowly faced the bat. Look, you can do it. Yuio. Steel was growing all over Lee Hyun-sung's body. It grew, and grew again. He soon became a sword. Ares was noticeably baffled. If Yu Jonghyuk was here, he definitely would have said. This is the reason why Lee Hyun-sung got the nickname of Steel Sword. Steel Sword. The reason he was called Steel Sword wasn't because he could control a sword well. The character Lee Hyun-sung has used the Stigma Steel Transformation LV-10. Steel Transformation. It was the stigma of a constellation from a distant place in the universe. As the stories piled up, it became harder than any metal and had the advantage of being capable of regenerating if broken. Lee Hyun-sung was no different from a living, strongest sword. The constellation, Master of Steel, is frowning at your cruelty. Perhaps it was because this was his first time being a sword, but Lee Hyun-sung was still in an insecure state. I deliberately spoke in order to inspire Lee Hyun-sung's morale. Hyun-sung SSI, do you see the shield that Heracles is holding? Yes, what is that? It is the original version of Heracles' shield that I gave you before. In the past, I had given the replica version of Heracles' shield to Lee Hyun-sung. It was the shield that Lee Hyun-sung kept cleaning. I'll give it to you, Hyun-sung SSI. Really? Of course. Lee Hyun-sung completely adapted and integrated himself into the hand of the giant soldier. It was a perfect grip like a handshake. I started running. A large amount of probability was consumed as I once again clashed with Ares in Heracles. The star stream is paying attention to you. The Bureau is doubting your probability. Overusing this probability will endanger your body. Steel sword and Heracles' bat firmly collided. Ares was surprised by the force and took one step back. Damn crazy. We struck each other again. Part of Heracles' bat flew away as debris and Lee Hyun-sung's steel transformation had cracks all over it. We were desperate because it couldn't be a long-lasting battle. Lee Hyun-sung, Kim Nam-woon, me as well. The giant story, Demon World Spring, is continuing. There wasn't the stage transformation like when we fought Surya, but this story was protecting us. a stage where Lee Hyun-sung and I were together. Kim Nam-woon, who was once an enemy, was now part of the story. The most despicable soul in the world, a man born from steel. Finally, the blade of the steel sword cut at Heracles' right shoulder. Ares growled out, "Why are you trying so hard? Olympus has always been merciful to you." "Merciful? Is that why you placed the fate on me?" "Just because of that small that." "It is small. You survived it anyway. You should be thankful about successfully passing the trial." "That wasn't my only enmity. My colleague is dying because of you guys." "Colleague?" The sword and the club hit each other again, as Ares seemed to remember something. "The incarnation who used to the Singularity Watcher." "It isn't an incarnation but you, Sangha. We didn't make the incarnation do that. She brought that misery onto herself." Ares laughed. "The mortal tried to access Olympus' database. It is natural to suffer." I shouted through gritted teeth, "It is you who gave her that strength. You brought about such a situation." "God is watching. Everything is a human choice." "Do you think you can use choice for a predetermined cause?" Ares laughed. "This is the scenario." Cold anger settled deep in my chest. Yes, this was a constellation. They had a desire for stimulating scenarios and enjoyed the fall of incarnations. They made good and evil on purpose. A god waiting merrily for humans to break the taboo. Sparks that I couldn't afford started to appear around Pluto's body. A brilliant magic power storm occurred around the junction of bat and steel. Ares exclaimed, "This crazy bastard." Kim Dokja was angry. Apart from that anger, Kim Dokja's sense of reasoning was still as cold as ever. In fact, it was almost impossible to defeat Ares in a frontal showdown, but now the story was different. Kim Dokja thought. This was the sea where Ares couldn't exert enough power. It was a sub-scenario where he couldn't release all his status. Crucially, Heracles was an early model of the giant soldier. Heracles bat broken Pluto's left arm, and at the same time, the steel sword penetrated Heracles' waist. Ares hurriedly cried out, "If you do this, you really will turn all of Olympus into an enemy. Ask anyone to come." However, they wouldn't come. The 12 gods were all cowards. Zeus, Poseidon, or anyone else. Heracles was pushed back by the white pure star energy. Even to the end, Ares didn't fully release his status. Not all narrative-grade constellations were like Surya. It had been a while since the real Gigantomachia. The 12 gods had forgotten their lives. The same was true for Ares, a fierce warrior. He seemed more courageous than anyone else, but he was actually more cautious about his life than anyone else. He flaunted his bravery in Gigantomachia, but now he was a constellation who feared the aftermath of opening his status in the scenario. Ares shouted angrily, "Aren't you afraid of probability?" "I'm not afraid." Lee Hyun-sung, Kim Nam-woon, me as well. There was no such thing as fear. It was because we had been living through the aftermath the whole time. Rather, it took courage to be weak. Along with the bubbling sea foam, I thrust the steel sword into Heracles' cockpit. "You have knocked down giant soldier Heracles. You have acquired a new story. The star relic Heracles bat damaged has been acquired. The star relic Heracles shield damaged has been acquired. The star relic Heracles spear damaged has been acquired." Then a tremendous explosion occurred. Kim Nam-woon. I emerged from Pluto's cockpit at the moment of the explosion. Pluto had exceeded the limits of probability and was breaking down. "This dog," Kim Nam-woon sounded happy. After a while, Pluto's body couldn't withstand the probability storm and collapsed. It was the result of taking the probability on my behalf. Fortunately, the power supply seemed safe. It was just that more fighting would be difficult. In the haze of the smoke, I saw Ares, who escaped from the cockpit like me. Ares was wounded all over his body, and he was roaring furiously. The game hadn't ended yet. Heracles was a type of protective sphere. The moment Ares opened his status, I would have to deal with him head-on. Still, it didn't matter. In the first place, my purpose was to make him fall from Heracles. Usanga SSI told me something about you. As Ares had mentioned, Usanga used Hermes' system to investigate all types of future information. Among them were things about Olympus. I heard you were once hit by Heracles' spear. Usanga had told me that Ares fought Heracles and was stabbed in the thigh with his spear. Fake can be real. Can I make this story real? If the weapon could be obtained. Ares' eyes were shaken as he glared at me angrily. I was curious. Heracles is the creature you have created. Then is this myth real or fake? Ares rushed towards me as I kept speaking. How much power can a fake story exert in the star stream? Aren't you curious? The story fragment in Heracles' spear is responding to you. The story, Natural Enemy in War, has begun. The story started talking. With one penetration, the spear neutralized the god of war. I held the spear with all my strength. It was such a heavy spear that I wondered if I could throw it by myself. Ares was now in sight. I should throw it properly. If it fails, I would die here. At this moment, the weight of the spear lightened. Someone was also holding onto the spear from behind me. It wasn't Lee Hyun-sung, but there was no need to think. Only one incarnation in all of ways of survival could take on the weight of this spear lightly. In the first place, this incarnation was an ally. Kim Dokja, there is only one chance. It was an eternal once, a once made with the countless failures of the regressor. It has always been once for me. Thus this one chance couldn't fail. We threw the spear at the same time. Chapter 332, God's Enemy 5. The spear flew away with a dark blue light. The power and status of the spear weren't at a level that Yu Jonghyuk originally was capable of. Perhaps the third round Yu Jonghyuk's understanding if the spear had sharply increased after he went through hell of eternity. I watched the flying spear and asked, "You came back faster than I thought. What happened to the returnees?" "I'll explain later." Ares gritted his teeth and tried to avoid the flying spear. He might not be able to move freely in the air like Hermes, but it should be enough for Ares to move the spear. At least, if there wasn't a story in the spear. The spear that left the fingertips was inevitable. Could a story have feelings? No story expert was able to give a definitive answer. The only certainty was the situation currently unfolding in front of my eyes. The fragment of the story, Enemy of the War God, is showing hostility to atrocious war god. The Heracles in this world line was fake, but over time, fake became real. The created story had its own will. The moment Ares quickly turned in the air, the spear turned at the same speed. Ares hurriedly took a defensive posture, but the spear ignored it. There was a terrible amount of blood, and Ares gave a pained scream when his thigh was pierced. One of the great 12 gods, the god of war, fell into the sea while bleeding. "I'll subdue him." Lee Hyun-sung, who had been waiting on the ground after releasing steel transformation, struck Ares' body with great mountain smash while Yu Jonghyuk opened his transcendence and trampled on Ares' incarnation body. It was fortunate that Yu Jonghyuk came back at a good timing. "The earth side is all sorted out." Yu Jonghyuk didn't answer. Ares struggled and his face twisted as he was trampled on by a pair of boots. No matter how much he struggled, the spear in his thigh was restraining his status. The story of Heracles was persistent and stubborn. At the very least, it was strong enough for the 12 gods to be neutralized in the 60th scenario. It was something all the 12 gods inflicted on themselves. This Hephaestos like bastard. The constellation, Volcanic Blacksmith, is frowning. I saw the red arrow floating over Ares' head and pulled out Unbroken Faith. In order to win this scenario, the 2 leaders on Olympus' side had to be killed. Ares was one of them. The Ares in front of me wouldn't really die because he was an incarnation body. However, the loss of the incarnation body would be huge damage to the 12 gods. Then Yu Jonghyuk's thoughts entered my mind. "There is no time. I can save it if I hurry. Nectar is required." Yu Jonghyuk aimed the black demon sword at Ares' neck and opened his mouth. "Ares, do you have nectar?" I was baffled by Yu Jonghyuk's sudden words. Nectar? I knew the identity of this item. If Vedas has the star fluid soma, Olympus has nectar. This jerk was he still greedy to enhance his body. At this time, constellations who entered the channel sent indirect messages. A number of constellations have entered the channel. The constellation, King Humu the Great, is warning you. The constellation, One-Eyed Maitreya, wants to tell you about the crisis on Earth. There was a beep, and the indirect messages disappeared. The constellation, Secretive Plotter, is warning everyone to shut up. I looked up and saw Bu making a restless expression. But, Bu, what's going on? There was no answer from Bu. She was trying to avoid my eyes. Everything was uncertain. It wasn't another Dakibai hiding from me, it was Bu. Then Ares opened his mouth. You are a time-defying being. Why does the man who received the blessing of immortality need nectar? I have no obligation to respond to you. Once again, give me the nectar. Is one of your colleagues in danger? Is that why you need nectar? Yu Jonghyuk's black demon sword lightly touched Ares' neck. There was the sound of blood falling. The particles of blood would have all the stories he built up contained in the red and white blood cells. Ares seemed to think of something and opened his mouth. I don't have it on my now. However, if you pull this spear from me, I can go and get nectar for you. That won't happen, then die. Yu Jonghyuk's black demon sword stabbed Ares' heart. Ares' incarnation body emitted a faint light and he started to turn to gray. He was recovering his incarnation body from the scenario. The enraged Ares exclaimed, I will repay this debt, puppet of the oldest dream. There was a loud sound and Ares' incarnation body completely disappeared. The constellation, Atrocious War God, has left the battlefield. One of the leaders of Olympus has abandoned the scenario. You have defeated the atrocious war god. The legendary story, one who defeated the war god, has been acquired. You have obtained 400,000 coins as compensation. Major contributors: Constellation Demon King of Salvation, Incarnation Yu Jonghyuk, Incarnation Lee Hyun-sung. There were huge rewards as the messages continued. A new story has been added to the existing Gigantomachia. Some of the items on the incarnation body of Atrocious War God will be distributed to the main contributors. After the system messages, indirect messages were sent to the battlefield. The constellation Wind Expedition King is shocked. The constellation Spokesman of Justice and Wisdom is astonished. The constellation Almighty Sun distrusts his eyes. The battlefield became a crucible of confusion. It was the same for the heroes fighting in Olympus camp and the giants fighting against them. Even those watching the battlefield were included. The fact that the war god of Olympus abandoned the scenario was a big shock. Ha 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 ha. This time Gigantomachia is really interesting. Zhang Fei's true voice rang out as he crossed the battlefield and dealt with the heroes. Yu Jonghyuk didn't care about the turmoil and was searching through the rubble of the dead Ares. He really doesn't have nectar, then I must kill Hebe. Yu Jonghyuk, you crazy bastard. I grabbed Yu Jonghyuk by the collar and shouted. What are you doing? You would have killed him if I hadn't. Why kill him straight away? I could have received one more star relic from him by threatening him. Of course, I agreed that we should kill Ares. However, in a situation where his incarnation body was held hostage, I could have received more items. This isn't the time to be leisurely. Why are you asking for nectar? You don't need it, do you? I'm going to get Soma from Vedas. A sinister hunch filled me. Yu Jonghyuk, what happened on Earth? Perhaps you Sangha. Earth is safe. Don't think futile things and concentrate on finishing Gigantomachia. Yu Jonghyuk spoke in a determined voice. The war isn't over yet. Yu Jonghyuk looked around the battlefield. Ares' Heracles had collapsed. However, one thing to keep in mind was that the Heracles ridden by Ares was just one of numerous giant soldiers. More dirty ones are coming. Countless Heracles were running to this side along the sea route Argo had created. The mass production type Heracles. In these long years, Olympus had prepared many giant soldiers for the war against other nebulae. Kill the giants. Their fierce momentum was enough to shake the waves. Previously, it wouldn't be strange if the giants ran away in fear. However, now it was different. It is the time of liberation. Comrades, Heracles is fake. Another leader on this side suddenly tore through the portal. Briareus. He used to have 100 arms and now only had 50 due to probability, but he was still enough to compete in the battlefield. Don't be fooled by what you see. Believe in yourself, not the myths already recorded. The giants roared after hearing his true voice. Yu Jonghyuk spoke, "You've changed the myth." The power of the myth was determined by those who believed in it. The protagonist of Gigantomachia was Heracles. The fact that Heracles was a fake had a direct impact on the giants. The shaky stage transformation was the evidence. On this broken stage, a new stage was being made. On the pages of the torn script, another script would be used. However, Yu Jonghyuk's expression didn't relax. This isn't the end. The gods will come. Ares was only one of the 12 gods. If the contents of the original were the same, there would be at least 2 more of the 12 gods fighting. One was spokesman of justice and wisdom, Athena. The other was Almighty Sun, Apollon. Yu Jonghyuk glanced at the broken Pluto. You can't go with the gods with the weary and broken giant soldier. There is still a long time before you can fight one-on-one with the 12 gods. I won't know without trying. These words were spoken, but it was impossible for the current Yu Jonghyuk to go head-to-head and win against the 12 gods. In my case, it was possible because I was lucky with the tricks I used. After witnessing Ares' defeat, the 12 gods will come in different ways. Even with your status, you are likely to have to sacrifice some probability. It doesn't matter, that will make it taste better. You deal with spokesmen of justice and wisdom. It will be difficult alone, so I'll give you one more person. Then you'll be able to stop her somehow. Who are you going to add? You'll know soon. I saw Athena and Apollon flying in the distance. They had a terribly status that could be felt from this distance. It would definitely be different from the battle with Ares. Yu Jonghyuk adjusted the black demon sword and asked, "Will you deal with the Almighty Sun? There is a separate constellation for him. I will trust your tricks this once." The moment he spoke, Yu Jonghyuk ran into the sky. He disappeared using red phoenix shunpo, leaving a beautiful trail behind him. Yu Jonghyuk's early stage of transcendence was now perfect. There was the sound of the black demon sword splitting through the air. It stopped before Athena, and a collision of red magic power occurred almost simultaneously. Get out of the way or die. Spokesman of justice and wisdom, Athena, the daughter of the master of lightning who ruled Olympus and the most respected war god in Olympus. You might be proficient in mythology, but I am different from Ares. They might both be war gods, but Ares and Athena were different. Both gods fought in many proxy wars, but he had never won against Athena. Athena spoke, "I don't hate you. My purpose is to return the giants to Tartarus, but if you continue to disturb." Cold anger filled her expression. "In the name of justice, I am forced to punish you." Athena was a god who always fulfilled her words. If she truly lifted her spear and shield, there were few people who could prevent her wrath in all of Olympus. There were sparks as someone's true voice came from the sky. "You are still using that line, Athena. Whenever we cut the black square-ing demons together, nothing has changed." I was barely breathing as I looked up at the sky. Athena was a constellation with one of the strongest combat power. However, it was limited to Olympus. If there was an Athena of justice in Olympus. Brilliant flames appeared in the air, and a new incarnation entered the battlefield. The pure white flames subsided, and I saw a person I knew well. There is Yong Hee-won in Kim Dokja's company. The strongest sword I had finally appeared on the battlefield. "It's been a long time, Athena." Uriel unfolded pure white wings as she descended into Yong Hee-won's body. Chapter 333, God's Enemy 6. Yong Hee-won emitted a pure white light as she pointed the sword of judgment at Athena. Athena spoke, "Uriel, I didn't hear that Eden was coming. I'm not here as part of Eden." Then, I'm just helping my incarnation. Uriel continued speaking. Athena, up to here, haven't you done a lot for Olympus so far? How long are you going to worry about Gigantomachia? Are you going to keep creating it with the Bureau? I'm concerned. It is very serious, Uriel. We are just trying to recall the tale of encouraging good while punishing evil. Good wins and evil is defeated. It is right to emphasize this a few times. Encouraging good while punishing evil. As the good story increases, the constellations will consume good scenarios. The more this happens, the cleaner the star stream will become. Uriel's eyes shook when she heard the words. Carrying out many good stories and scenarios would make the world better. Certainly, there was a time when she believed so. Then is the star stream better now? Do the constellations love the good stories? It isn't enough right now, but someday. The angel's wings flapped and moved. Athena, you are usually on the side of the weak. Uriel looked down at the giants fighting on the ground. To be precise, she was watching the smallest giant breaking the sky sword saint. I want to ask you, spokesman of justice and wisdom. Uriel's tone changed and Athena's expression became stricter. Is that giant evil? Athena looked down at the breaking the sky sword saint. The breaking the sky swordsmanship smashed the sky and tore at the constellations. The breaking the sky sword saint was small but strong. Perhaps she was stronger than the giants who had been idle in Tartarus. However, she wasn't strong from the beginning. Go away, get away from me, you unlucky girl. Cursed girl, you ruined my family. The blood of the giants. It is said that if you eat that girl's heart, you will gain the strength of a tiger. The suffering that the breaking the sky sword saint experienced were narrated and entered Athena's eyes. It was a bitterness she had to bear just because she was born as a giant or because she had a different appearance. Athena bit her lips. All giants are dangerous. Their nature is fierce and they can bring about another terrible disaster. Disaster? Who will they bring the danger of disaster to? Athena firmly grasped her spear, but she was avoiding Uriel's gaze. Of course, to humans. Humans? Since when does Olympus care about humans? Uriel, you better be careful with your words. Athena, you know it as well. Athena's mouth half closed and Uriel continued. The thing you are trying to create right now is a fake, encouraging good while punishing evil. It is a fake myth that arbitrarily designates evil and good. Athena's eyes shook. So what if it is fake, even if it is fake? Athena, did you forget? The scenario of encouraging good while punishing evil because of the rampant fakes. Uriel's voice quivered as she remembered the time of demon hunting. Athena, in this scenario, there is no good or evil. There is only our desire to see the story. Uriel stared up at the sky and a light shone. I don't want to see this story anymore. Archangel Uriel was staring at the star stream. Now I want to see real evil being broken. Athena's eyes widened. Her trembling voice flowed out. That story has disappeared a long time ago. No, it hasn't. Uriel smiled as she watched me. That's why I came here. The sword of judgment and Athena's spear pointed at each other. There is no more room for compromises. The Archangel of Eden collided with the goddess of Olympus. Athena's onslaught went beyond the probability. Yong-Heewon seemed to be pushed at first, but the situation soon stabilized thanks to Yu Jonghyuk's participation. It wouldn't be impossible to stall Athena while the synchronization with Uriel lasted. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is rejoicing in the bloody battle between constellations. The constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, wants both to die. The absolute evil constellations are cheering for the collision between absolute good constellations. A huge admission fee was pouring into the channel through Bu. Bu shook a bit. But I looked at the other side of the sky. The problem was that red-headed man flying over there. He was riding a huge carriage with a red sun behind him. The almighty sun, Apollon. Just like the myths, he had a very handsome face. It was almost enough to slap Yu Jonghyuk's cheeks once. No, it would be twice. The constellation, almighty sun, is directing intense anger at you. He was one of the 12 gods and too much for me to handle alone. Pluto was broken and the body parts hadn't fully recovered. Maybe my incarnation body would turn to ash after being hit once or twice by the sun. However, I wasn't worried. It was because I wasn't the one who would fight the almighty sun. In the distance, I heard something like a locomotive horn. There was the sound of train wheels. At one time, I didn't know how scary this sound was. The constellation, Almighty Sun, is confused. If there were 12 main gods in Olympus, there were 8 Lokapala in Vedas. The Lokapala that appeared was one I knew well. Surya, why are you here? The sun carriage and sun train collided, creating a blinding explosion. The lacking probability meant Surya's train wasn't as big as before, but it was enough to match Apollon's carriage. Surya, can I accept this as Veda's meaning? I have no relationship with Vedas. I left it a while ago. Surya laughed. I just came here to determine who the best sun god is. A blazing sunlight filled the air. It was a showdown between Surya and Apollon. The arrows containing Apollon's light power covered the sky like a waterfall, and Surya's third eye disrupted the trajectory of the arrows. The myth and myth were crashing together. It was enough to leave Apollon to Surya. I looked around the rest of the battlefield. Dakja Sasai, I like the new shield. Li Hyunsung, who held Heracles' shield, was crossing the battlefield while knocking down heroes and giant soldiers. Han Suyong precisely managed her magic power and handled the mass-produced Heracles one by one. Once stage transformation started to collapse, the balance was slightly leaning towards us. The powerful gigants pushed the heroes, and Li Gilyung and Shin Yusung controlled the Chimera dragon, using its breath to turn the beach into a sea of fire. Li Jihai was constantly firing shells at the mass-produced Heracles. I had increased Li Jihai's magic power in preparation for this day. A new myth is emerging in Gigantomachia. The myth of Kim Dokja's company was being recorded in real time. Everyone was fighting well, and nothing was wrong. Nevertheless, Kim Dokja was strangely nervous. It was a very small hunch. I subtly felt that something was wrong. There was nothing wrong when I checked calmly. Uriel and Surya participated in a timely manner, and Yu Jonghyuk returned safely from Earth's crisis. Then why? Actually, Kim Dokja knew the reason. No. Look around. The one I was looking for didn't exist. Athena, Jason, Apollon, Achilles. There were many gods and heroes who made a name for themselves in Olympus, but none of them was Olympus, leader. If the scenario was correct, there should be one more leader other than Ares. I had to kill them in order to end this scenario. Perhaps it was the volcanic blacksmith Hephaestus who hadn't appeared, but he didn't directly participate in Gigantomachia in the original novel or the revised versions. Then who the hell was the other leader of Olympus? At this moment, a hero entered Kim Dokja's eyes. Stop, you have to stop. I looked at the hero, a beautifully tanned, muscular body and eyes full of dizziness. The status I felt from him was similar to Yu Sanga, the hero of the labyrinth, Theseus. This fight has no meaning. Theseus was trying to stop the fight. We have to stop here. There is no need to fight the giants. Doing this won't help Olympus, Athena, Apollon, don't you know? I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. In the past Gigantomachias, Theseus had never appeared and done such a thing. It wasn't an impossible story, but... Please stop. At this rate, Olympus will. It happened at this moment. A red arrow flashed over Theseus' head. It was an arrow stating he was the leader of Olympus. Then Theseus grabbed his head and groaned with pain. This no, father. Something went wrong. Dionysus, watching the scenario on the sofa of the administrative bureau, jumped up. The popcorn box rolled across the ground. The surprised Bihyung was going to open his mouth when Dionysus exclaimed, "Damn, why is Theseus there?" Dionysus shouted at the Docubus. It was as if he was the Docubi king. Quickly prepare the probability-plausibility screening, or everyone in that scenario will die. The next moment, there was an explosion on the screen. I couldn't tell what was happening, My ears rang and my vision turned completely white. I was caught in the explosion and flew through rock walls into a cave. Your incarnation body is severely damaged. The damage to your incarnation body is serious. You need urgent treatment. I bandaged the wounds to stop my stories from escaping. I staggered up and looked outside the coastal cave. A battlefield strewn with blood. The foam reached the tip of my toes and the sea breeze soaked my lips. In addition, no one could be seen on the battlefield. There was no Shin Yu-sung and Lee Gil-young flying in the sky on a dragon. Lee Ji-hai directing the Phantom Fleet as well. In addition, Lee Sealhwa and Lee Hyun-sung, who had just been protecting the party. Yu-sung Gil-young. I couldn't see Yu Jong-hyuk fighting Athena in the sky, or Han Soo-young destroying the mass-produced Heracles. There wasn't even Uriel or Surya. Han Soo-young, Yu Jong-hyuk. My shouts echoed inside the cave where the sea breeze was blowing. My heart sank. What the hell happened? After a while, something huge emerged from the water, an immeasurable and inscrutable being to human cognition. I thought as I faced it, this is a god. It felt like all the constellations I previously saw were fake. It was an existence that could only be described as a god. I am the spear that parts the boundaries of the sea, Poseidon. The mythical father of the great hero of Olympus, Theseus. The moment his true voice rang out, my heart throbbed and blood poured out. It was just like the first time I met an outer god a long time ago. My fingertips shook like I had palsy. Why did Poseidon descend? It wasn't possible. Poseidon had never intervened in any period of Gigantamatia. If the myth-grade constellation like him intervened, not only would the odds of Olympus be seriously damaged, the entire scenario would be blown away. Nevertheless, he appeared here. What the hell? What was he thinking? My hand kept shaking. Then after a while, I realized that I wasn't the one shaking. The smartphone that I subconsciously held tightly was vibrating. Chapter 334, End of the Myth 1. You will die like this. This was the screen of the vibrating smartphone. I felt the rising waves against my toes and raised my smartphone. Originally, the 4th revision should have been sent. I think something went wrong. I knew who was talking. The librarians of the library inside the 4th wall. Perhaps they were the ones who sent this. This is all I can do to help, even if it is only partly. There was light interference and sentences rose from the LCD screen. It was as if the contents of the book were summarized. This place again. It was obvious whose monologue the sentences belonged to. This was clearly the contents of the 4th revision. There were too many mistakes in the 3rd round. The appearance of Poseidon was unexpected. I should have thought more about the issue of probability. I should have considered the relationship between myths. The sentences were filled with regret as always. Perhaps we failed even in the 4th revision. If I had saved Lee Suk-young, not Yu Sanga at that time. What? I stiffened and no longer scrolled down the screen. Lightning struck the screen and all the flowing sentences were erased. I hurriedly shouted, "Wait a minute, show me again. What did you mean by those words just now?" There was no reply. Kim Dokja, fate can't be changed, however. Shuti up Nirvana. The exclusive skill 4th wall is strongly activated. The power of the 4th wall obstructed Nirvana's voice. The sentences disappeared and my fast heartbeat rapidly calmed down. My irritated head cooled down like a sophisticated clock. This composure, I didn't like it. I couldn't rage when I wanted to rage. I couldn't be sad when I wanted to grieve. 4th wall. The 4th wall is looking at you. Tell me honestly, is my mother in danger? The 4th wall didn't answer. Shit, sometimes I wondered if this guy was on my side or not. I looked up at the air, Bu. But Bu, whose body was transparent, looked down at me with sad eyes. I opened my mouth to ask before closing it again. The exclusive skill, 4th wall, is shaking. Bu was crying. All types of thoughts passed through my head. Some of the confusing puzzle pieces were slowly fitting together. Yu Jong-hyuk had returned too quickly and he looked like he was hiding something. Somehow I thought it was strange. The reason why the constellations sent strange messages and why Yu Jonghyuk was seeking the nectar. Maybe all of this was due to the same reason. "This friend, don't worry, your mother isn't dead yet." A voice was heard behind me. In Tusk, it was information that shouldn't be leaked. Sparks emerged from the darkness, and it was a constellation I knew well, Dionysus. "It has been a while. Is this the first time since the last banquet?" Dionysus approached my side and gazed outside the coastal cave, his left hand charred from the probability. This place contained one of the three chief gods of Olympus, the ruler of the sea god Poseidon. Poseidon didn't move, but there was an ominous silence hanging around him. Like a predator waiting for the chance, Poseidon was silently staring at the sea. It was as if he was seeing where he came from. "The probability-plausibility screening has begun, and Uncle won't move too much. However, don't do anything rash. He is looking hard for you." You are saying this while spamming your true voice near me. It's okay because I'm hiding here using my power. He can't hear me. I saw that entrance of the cave was covered with a wine glass. Maybe this barrier was hiding Dionysus, and Dionysus gazed at Poseidon and spoke. "Isn't it great? The third chief gods, that is a myth-grade constellation. They are high constellations that ordinary constellations can never reach in their life." Certainly, I could only say he was great. If I was Poseidon, I would be able to stop the nameless fog that had once destroyed the demon realm. The place where his spear reaches will soon become the boundary of the sea. Poseidon's gaze soon reached the sea. All the mountains under the sea were shuddering before his sublime presence and prostrated themselves, praying for an error they probably hadn't committed. The depths of my heart were roaring. "You are really amazing." "What are you saying?" "There are no signs that you are truly afraid when looking at him." "Why?" Of course I was afraid. My legs trembled and I was dizzy, but more than that. Kim Dokja was really impressed. I watched the majestic Poseidon for a long time before answering. "I couldn't imagine this." "Imagine? Haha, you truly are a funny person." "Why are you helping me? You are part of Olympus." "It is my heart." "What happened to the other party members?" Dionysus flicked his fingers and a screen appeared. The party members were gathered in the distant sky. They were tied by Ariadne's web and floating in the air using Hermes' walking method. No one was missing. Of course, the narrative-grade constellations Surya and Uriel were also safe. Indeed, it was a clever escape. The sky was the domain of Zeus. Poseidon might draw the boundaries of the sea, but he couldn't reach into the sky. Dionysus sipped from a glass and said, "Rest assured, none of them were hurt. Ariadne and Hermes made it just in time." "Can I give a punch?" "To who?" I glared silently at Dionysus. "Me, why? Don't you know?" Dionysus was quick to notice and replied, "Ah, it's because of that incarnation." "Yes, I'm sorry. You can hit me if you want to. Instead, do it a bit softly. You are a constellation, so it will be quite painful." I didn't hit him. Instead, I asked, "Why did you do that to you, Sangus Si?" "The story is complicated." Dionysus sat at the edge of the coastal cave and laid down his glass. He took some time to choose his words. "In this world line, the Mora three sisters received a peculiar prophecy." "Peculiar prophecy?" Dionysus glanced at me and replied like a Greek-era orator, "The end of all will soon come." "What does that mean?" "I don't know. The obvious thing is that Olympus can't get away from it either. Thanks to this, Olympus has been busy for a while. All the scenarios will come to an end one day, but we had to know how it ended." Dionysus continued speaking. "In the process, we found some singularities related to the predicted end. One of them was the regressor with you. You chose Yu Sangha to keep an eye on Yu Jonghyuk." "Honestly, yes." My anger increased, but I endured it. "Dionysus," words hadn't finished. "Then while spying on him, we came to know of your existence. An incarnation who hates fate, hates constellations, and doesn't believe in the star stream. He became a constellation on his own without choosing a sponsor, and he is even a constellation we can't see the identity of. A singularity I have never seen before. We found you and made up our minds. Dionysus laughed. Hide you and use you. There were remnants of dim stories in his tone. Some scenes in the past where I thought I was lucky passed through my mind. The even bridge that unfolded at the first Oxu station, Deus Ex Machina. There was the probability that helped whenever I was in danger. We wanted to use you to stop the destruction. Thus, I wanted to help you by using Incarnation Usanga. It is different from Ares' words. He wants to get rid of me. There is already internal conflict among the 12 gods. I don't know if you're aware. A golden aura rose from Dionysus' body as he got up. This was the grandeur of the lineage of Zeus, king of the sky. The present Olympus is a fake. Dionysus, golden eyes gazed at me like he was looking down on his vassal. Just as human priests created gods to establish their authority, the gods of Olympus created myths to maintain their power. Fake myths such as Gigantomachia and Heracles, and this is the result. The constellation, god of wine and ecstasy, is looking at you. I want to end this era, then I want to make a new Olympus. The story king of a kingless world is responding. The story sleeping inside me reacted to his story. The Dionysus in front of me was one of the candidates to replace Zeus in the future. Anyway, that was the plan. Now this place is haunted by the fish uncle, and there is nothing you can do. Perhaps the scenario will end this way. If the probability-plausibility screen begun then, there was a high probability this scenario would fail. The participants would receive compensation according to their combination, but Gigantomachia wouldn't occur. Perhaps Poseidon had been aiming for this. At the expense of his own status and nebula probability, he was trying to defend Olympus. No, there is still something I can do. What? I think we can overturn Olympus in this scenario. Instead, give me a nectar in exchange for my help. Nectar, I have a bit here. I took the nectar from Dionysus. I placed a few drops on my tongue. A star fluid has been ingested for the first time. The star fluid nectar has responded to you. The probability of Olympus has restored your broken body. All your stats and skill levels have increased slightly. Was this the star fluid I had only heard about in words? I received an effect even though my average stats exceeded 200. Dionysus watched me put away the remaining nectar and asked, "Hey, did you forget that one blow before? Yet you want to fight again. Will you help? Are you crazy? Even if I help you, no. It is impossible to change the situation even if half of the 12 gods help. Don't you know how strong that fish is? Are you still out of your mind? The end of this scenario is already. The end of the scenario is fixed. Is that what you want to say?" As Giant Briareus stated, fate couldn't be averted. Ares had also said it. This scenario was just the development of a causal event that was scheduled. Yes, that's right. Perhaps their words were correct. If the end is fixed, is there any meaning in the process? It must be meaningful, but that is just being romantic. As a result, it is recorded as a failed story. Are all failed stories meaningless? Even if you know you will fail, isn't the story of those who have fought to the end worth it? The constellations like those stories, but those who do so are bound to die. It is a possibility. Then what about this? Someone who is influenced by the story tries to challenge the same story again. At this moment, Dionysus opened his mouth. 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. What if many constellations and incarnations are affected by the story and live such a story again? Failure might be scheduled, but the countless beings built up a story of courage as they confronted the given fate over and over again. What if they accumulated stories about challenges and challenged them in another way? Then are the failed stories useless? Stage transformation wasn't absolute. It was because the myth was just a creation. Dionysus was speechless. In the end, the probability of the star stream was a law that flowed towards the desired flow that many beings wanted. The story that many beings desired would be realized someday. Dionysus barely managed to open his mouth, but he was oddly incensed. Then are you going to be the first? You will be the first victim and overthrow the torch of the scenario. Nope, I smiled. I will be the last torch. What? It is because numerous people have already failed before me. I knew I needed hundreds or thousands of attempts to defeat this Poseidon, just like the current existence running towards Poseidon. Damn it. Chapter 335, End of the Myth 2. Yu Jonghyuk was rushing to Poseidon, who even narrative-grade constellations avoided. Dionysus asked, "Are you talking about this crazy guy?" I activated Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Yu Jonghyuk's thoughts were pushed into my head. The period while the probability-plausibility screening is happening is the only opportunity. Poseidon is a myth-grade constellation. There is almost no way to subdue him through stage transformation. The only useful thing is this branch. I noticed the branch in Yu Jonghyuk's hand. The constellation, spokesman of justice and wisdom, is astonished. Perhaps the branch was a stolen star relic from Athena. Strictly speaking, it was a sacred star relic. Athena's olive branch. The reason why Poseidon was so scary was that despite living for many years, he had very few losing stories. Poseidon had lost once, and it was in the best he made with Athena. I had some memories from Usanga. A long time ago, Poseidon and Athena competed in a city. People decided that the god who gave the better gift would be the guardian of the city. At the time, Poseidon struck a rock with a trident, causing the sea to rise. Meanwhile, Athena grew an olive tree filled with rich fruit. Water is very common. Did Athena win? Yes, Athena won the competition and became the patron god. Thus, the city was called Athens. I'm sorry. Am I talking too much? Doc says I should know this as a fantasy expert. Of course, I had no idea. I wasn't as knowledgeable in myths as Usanga, yet this damn Yu Jonghyuk knew the story. If there is a slight blow, I can get rid of it. The olive branch. If there was a losing story, there was a losing story. Perhaps Poseidon would only vomit a bit of seawater after being struck by the branch. The constellation, spokesman of justice and wisdom, is warning you that this isn't enough. However, I could understand Yu Jonghyuk's choice. If the scenario was going to be forcibly terminated by the probability-plausibility screening, it wasn't too bad to do a bit of damage to Poseidon. If he was lucky, he might be able to get the story, one who changed the boundary of the sea a bit, or one who went against the owner of the sea. This was only if he was lucky. I prepared to jump forward in case of an emergency. Dionysus grabbed my shoulder. "Don't go, you will die." Huh. Dionysus' expression hardened. Then, the probability-plausibility screening has ended. There is no problem with the probability of the scenario. I looked up at the system messages in the air. The indirect messages poured out in succession. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is questioning the Bureau's judgment. The constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is cursing. Many constellations are suspicious of the Bureau's judgment. Anyone would be shocked. It was impossible. A myth-grade constellation had appeared in the 60th scenario, yet there were no problems with the probability. A giant trident appeared in Poseidon's hand as he slowly rose. The star relic Triana, the spear that drew the boundaries of the sea, a fearsome weapon that turned everything it touched into blood bubbles of the sea. Yu Jonghyuk, I shouted, but Yu Jonghyuk was already right under Poseidon's nose. Even Yu Jonghyuk would die if he received one blow. I couldn't bear it as I moved away from Dionysus and invoked Way of the Wind. However, Yu Jonghyuk was too far away and the Triana spear was close. Sparks of probability appeared like lightning in the air. The recoil naturally pushed Yu Jonghyuk back. There was a mild spring scent along with a black aura. Someone was blocking Poseidon's way. "Poseidon, why are you fighting with kids?" In the spot where the sparks disappeared, there was a goddess with a beautiful appearance. Half her face was covered with a folding fan, and there was a black silk cape around her body. Her face was unfamiliar, so I didn't recognize her for a moment. Dionysus screamed, "No, why is this old lady here?" The glare that could only bloom in the darkest underground blocked Poseidon's spear. Persephone. The sea seemed furious, and a fierce sea breeze shook her collar. Persephone glanced at me and smiled. I was thankful, but my feelings were complicated. Why did Persephone appear? I thought the underworld wouldn't directly intervene in this. Perhaps was it to gain a part of the giant story? Things would be very complicated if that happened. Persephone, why are you blocking me? I am telling you to stop here. Look, it's too much. Your Majesty's parents are all terrified. Persephone pointed to the sea where countless life forms were trembling. Some aquatic species turned belly up and died. Even the kraken, the giant second-grade monster, was breathless. The constellation, pure moonlight patron god, is deploring the death of life. The constellation, goddess of love and beauty, is dissuading the spear that parts the boundaries of the sea. The constellation, mistress of the hearth and benevolence, is talking to the spear that parts the boundaries of the sea. The neutral constellations were trying to dissuade Poseidon. Persephone continued speaking. This isn't the stage for a myth-grade constellation. Leave the children to fight among themselves. This is no longer a problem for children. It isn't a matter for children. My son was attacked. In fact, there was a small arrowhead in Theseus' left arm who Poseidon had descended in. Persephone narrowed her eyes. Just because of this, then you should punish those who attacked Theseus. Do you know who it is? It must be a giant. You don't know that. The giants will kill everyone. The stubborn attitude caused even the valiant giants to tremble with fear. Those who burrow deep underground, you will regret coming up to the ground today. The power of Triana caused all the nearby creatures to scatter, yet Persephone didn't back off. I was worried. She might be queen of the underworld, but it was impossible for her to stop Poseidon, a myth-grade constellation. Get out of the way. You might be your brother's wife, but I will kill you. Persephone didn't back down from the threat. Poseidon's Triana didn't hesitate. The light moved, and Athena and Apollon, watching the scene from the air, flew forward. No, Poseidon. Spear that parts the boundaries of the sea. It was too late. The moment the waves hit, Poseidon's spear was already stuck into Persephone's heart. Then, looking closer, the spear didn't hit Persephone but a giant hand. A hand made of dense darkness gripped Poseidon's spear. It was a feast of probability so bright that I would probably never see it again in my life. I understood why the Bureau had passed the probability-plausibility screening. Dionysus laughed while shivering. Haha, if things go wrong today, the 12 gods will die. A story of darkness was released into the air. The darkness that had kept silent for a long time was awakening. The giant story Underworld is coming to the sea. One of the 3 chief gods of Olympus, father of the rich knight. Underworld King Hades had descended to Gigantomachia. Poseidon, you are making a fight between children into one between adults. In the original novel of Ways of Survival, the myth-grade constellations had fought several times. Yet such a thing had never happened in the 60th scenario of Ways of Survival. If I remembered correctly, in the 75th scenario where Poseidon of Olympus and Shiva of Vedas collided, all of North America flew away. There were times when the surrounding asteroids were destroyed, and there was something else. Stop, you must stop. Spokesman of justice and wisdom Athena, almighty son Apollon, master of the skywalk Hermes and god of wine and ecstasy Dionysus. There was also Briareus of the 100-handers. The moment the clash between the 2 myth-grade constellations occurred, all of the constellations were thrown out like toys. The constellations were thrown into walls and Briareus lost half his remaining arms. No one was able to stop the struggle between the 2 myth-grade constellations. The nearby Yu Jonghyuk was also shocked and flew this way. I moved quickly to his body. King of the underworld and king of the sea. 2 myth-grade constellations were staring at each other. They were able to shake their world just by making eye contact. Poseidon was the one to open his mouth first. Hades, why did you emerge from the underworld? You have no justification to intervene in this situation. Even if the scales of probability are aligned, you shouldn't be here. Justification. It was necessary for a major being such as a myth-grade constellation to descend to the sub-scenario. The right justification would allow them to pass the plausibility screening. In Poseidon's case, his justification was his son Theseus. Then what about Hades? Who says there is no justification? We came to protect our successor. The one who answered was Persephone. Poseidon asked casually, "Successor, you don't have children." Poseidon's words were right. Unlike Zeus and Poseidon, who had numerous children, Hades had no children. It wasn't because Persephone and Hades' conjugal harmony wasn't good. Of course not. We don't want to have children and use them in the long-term war. My husband's brain isn't his crotch like you. Poseidon's expression hardened and Persephone continued. Isn't it strange to think of raising a child in this damn world of scenarios in the first place? I don't intend to attack your crooked values. Answer me bluntly. How do you have a successor without children? The cold voice was like the temperature of the deep sea. Poseidon's Triana cried out roughly. If you don't answer correctly, you and your husband will die horribly in the aftermath of the probability storm. Persephone laughed silently. Persephone slowly turned and looked this way. The moment I encountered the strange gaze, the pages of ways of survival flipped in my head. I looked down at the unconscious Yu Jonghyuk. Perhaps it was like this. Suddenly, several things were understood. In the 481st round, Hades was very interested in Yu Jonghyuk and said the following words. I want you to be the successor of the Underworld King. Come to think of it, the Underworld was especially friendly to Yu Jonghyuk, i.e. Kim Dokja's company. It was impossible for this cold couple. Everything could be understood if the Underworld was planning to use Yu Jonghyuk as their successor. They invited me and Yu Jonghyuk to the Constellation Banquet, invited me to the Gourmet Association, sneaked the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint into Tartarus. By the way, didn't it seem like I received more benefits? The next moment, the darkness of the world spoke to me. The constellation, father of the rich knight, wants to make you the successor of the Underworld King. Chapter 336, End of the Myth 3. What? I looked at the message with blank eyes. What did it say? The constellation, father of the rich knight, wants to make you the successor of the Underworld King. I wasn't mistaken. I gazed at Persephone, who was smiling this way. Rather than Yu Jonghyuk, who was supposed to be the successor, I was chosen instead. Still, I didn't understand. Why me? Poseidon spoke. You are crazy. You are going to make your successor someone who doesn't have divine blood. Isn't it past time to get over the disgusting, old-fashioned notion of blood descendants? Someone who hasn't even performed the task of succession. He performed the task. I wondered what Persephone was saying. I completed a task for the succession. Something flashed in my mind. I'll give you a task. You want to show me an interesting story. If you succeed, I will let you find the soul you want. Your task is to cut off the head of the serpent. Certainly, there was this incident. The test that I did to regain the soul of the 41st round Shin Yusung. At the time, I cut off Yamada no Arachi's head to complete Persephone's task. That wasn't an ordinary task, but a task for succession. Since when had this queen planned? Hades, are you serious? You want that trivial constellation to be your successor? Poseidon cried out fiercely, and Hades glanced at me. Come to think of it, Hades had always been favorable to me, father of the rich knight. He seemed strict and scary, but never once did he do anything to harm me. It was strange when thinking of the many characters who went to the underworld in the original novel. Persephone's eyes deepened. Demon King of Salvation, it is better to decide quickly. Becoming the successor of the underworld. It suggested that in future scenarios, I might be able to borrow the probability of the underworld. Furthermore, I was qualified to become the master of the underworld after succeeded Hades. Kim Dokja thought. If I accepted their proposal here, the underworld would formally be able to participate in Gigantomachia. In return, they would get a part in the giant story of Gigantomachia. If I refused the succession proposal, The underworld would suffer a great loss and be locked underground again. Then their relationship with me would be completely severed. Really clever queen of the underworld. The underworld would get the right to participate in Gigantomachia. I would prepare for the overthrow of Olympus. If I refused this offer, Poseidon was the only one to benefit. In such a situation, what was there to think about? In order to return to Earth as soon as possible, in order to revive my mother, this was the best way. I will be the successor of the underworld. However, I have a condition. I swiftly told her my condition. I also said that I couldn't accept the succession if the condition wasn't met. After a while, the constellation, father of the rich knight, has accepted your condition. The constellation, demon king of salvation, has become the successor of the underworld. The moment I made the declaration, the probability of the star stream moved. Many stars looked down on me. Some were jealous of me, some felt admiration, and some were genuinely pleased. Then the underworld king spoke. Spear that parts the boundaries of the sea. The tone was thicker than any voice I had ever heard. We of the underworld came here to protect our successor. It was a dependable tone. I really wanted a father like this. The star stream is convinced of the cause suggested by the father of the rich knight. The star stream has accepted the probability of the father of the rich knight entering. A huge scale was now moving. It was on a level I had never seen before. The two myth-grade constellations climbed on their respective scales, released their status, and destroyed the ecosystem of the scenario. The Bureau has built a wall of probability to prevent the destruction of this scenario. Many constellations are focused on the collision between two myth-grade constellations. Many constellations are shouting the modifier, spear, that parts the boundaries of the sea. Many constellations are shouting the modifier, father of the rich knight. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is keeping a close eye on his rivals. The constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is excited about the real confrontation. The constellation, secretive plotter, is silently watching the situation. Many constellations are praising the demon king of salvation for the confrontation. 700,000 coins have been sponsored. This was the moment I realized how big a deal my actions were in the star stream. Dionysus made a despondent laugh and said, You don't know what you have done." "No, I know." Then both constellations moved. In the darkness reminiscent of a giant mountain, a black sickle appeared. Meanwhile, Triana emerged from the waves that rushed like a tsunami. There was a collision as the waves surged in front, and a cloud of dust was created in the air, reminiscent of a nuclear explosion. Then Hades' body disappeared. Poseidon exclaimed, "Damn it, it is Kine." If Poseidon had the star relic Triana, Hades had the golden helmet Kine, a star relic made by the three Cyclops brothers of Olympus, and a helmet that could hide the existence of the wearer from the world. This is a cowardly method of fighting, younger brother. You are still trying to claim that you are the older brother. Every time the wind struck, water vapor swept through the area, and the fish that died in place of Poseidon were blown away. The enraged Poseidon pushed Triana towards the possible position of Hades' defense. The stormy waves swallowed the darkness before the darkness once again broke out from the waves. It was a game regarding the pride of the myths. In the duel between myth-grade constellations, neither of them retreated. The giant story Underworld is continuing. The giant story, supreme ruler of the open seas, is continuing. Their main stories struck, and Dionysus desperately started to protect the cave. The stories that the myths had been accumulating since birth were intersecting. The collision of the myths caused some sentences to disappear and some sentences to be born. The living stories of Poseidon and Hades were being rewritten here. I watched the scene like I was reading a novel. A new wave was pouring in from where the night and the sea met. It was a scene that had never been seen in ways of survival. It was beautiful. The battle itself was spectacular, tremendous, and marvelous. I pulled out my sword. Then Dionysus' surprised voice was heard. "What are you doing now?" I can't just watch. If the fighting of the two people continued, all the beings here would be wiped out from the aftermath. The giant story of Gigantomachia would be reconstructed around the influence of these two. In addition, they might be even now, but the stage of this battle was the sea. Therefore, it was obvious who the god of victory would side with. I have to help Hades. Let's try whaling. Didn't you see Athena disappearing into the horizon? If you get hit like that, you will die. It is because she was trying to catch the father whale. Then what about the baby whale? I was pointing at Theseus. The great Greek hero, who accepted Poseidon's descent, was releasing stories in the midst of the waves. Stop. Now stop, please. Dionysus, expression distorted. You want to send Poseidon back by defeating Theseus. It is cowardly, but it is the best method. It isn't cowardly. Still, do you think that fish will allow you to do so? It is impossible for a narrative-grade constellation to break through those waves. Yes, if I am only trying with a single story. However, what if I'm holding the sacred torch? At this moment, Dionysus' expression changed. Don't tell me. You want to create a sacred torch. Will you collect the stories to pierce through Uncle Fish's barrier? It is similar. A sacred torch. The flames that burned when many beings gathered their stories. Dionysus asked, who will carry that fire? You. I have to wear the fireproof suit first. I looked at the broken Pluto near the cave. Pluto was completely ruined in the previous battle with Ares. I pulled out the old to new toad. The toad sang, give me an old house and I'll give you a new house. I'll give you two. Instead, fix this with the new one. Go odd. The real power of the old to new toad wasn't simply exchanging items with new items. This toad had the special power to replace broken items with the same new items if the sacrifice was available. There was a reason Anna Croft wanted this toad at the auction house. I fed the toad with some low-level star relics from the battle just now in Pluto's body. The toad opened its mouth unusually wide and swallowed the metal Pluto. After a while, Pluto was vomited out. You was shit, what? I'm alive. Pluto, who was smaller at 2 meters in size, came out while covered in sticky fluids. It looked perfect without any scratches. Dionysus looked somewhat surprised, but his expression was still dark. How are you going to make the sacred torch? Do you think the other 12 gods will help you? In addition, the torch needs to borrow the power of the sun. I knew, however, there was a later matter. There was something more urgent right now. Someone rose from beside Dionysus. He looked terrible as soon as he woke up. You woke up. Poseidon. Yu Jonghyuk held his head like he had a headache and frowned. Thankfully, it wasn't a big hit. He is fighting over there. The opponent is Hades. Yu Jonghyuk read the battlefield at once. A great battle between myth-grade constellations. The probability was vibrating uneasily. Perhaps he was thinking the same thing now. It is a great opportunity to deal a blow to Olympus, don't you know? We have to hit them now. To do so, we need the cooperation of the woman you hate. A woman I hate. I silently stared towards the depths of the cave. Then from deep inside the cave, something like a torch turned on one by one. The woman walked slowly through the light. I stared at her and asked with a smile, Anna Croft, will you help? Chapter 337, End of the Myth. Why should I help you? Or you will die too. There were more than 10 incarnations in the darkness. They were Anna Croft, Selena Kim, and other party members. As expected, they also fought in Gigantomachia. We can escape before that happens. Then you'll receive damage. Wouldn't it be a good experience to clear it to the end, as long as you're in the middle of the scenario? Anna Croft stared at me as if to test my true intentions. What do you really want? King Lycomed's leather gloves. Don't you have it? I didn't see it at the auction house, no matter how hard I looked. Anna Croft had used future sight. She probably knew the value of the items she purchased beforehand. Anna Croft read my intentions and then smiled. I can't give you that. It is a material for my giant soldier. Are you trying to create a model capable of stage transformation? You should know it is impossible with your strength alone. I'll only know after trying. One of Anna Croft's party members stepped forward with hostility. Then Yu Jonghyuk stepped forward to confront him. There's nothing to say. There was the clear sound of the sword being pulled out. She is a woman I need to kill anyway. A transcendent status filled the cave, and the other side obviously became tense. I could use Yu Jonghyuk to take away items. The problem was that the opponent was Anna Croft. I raised my hand to restrain Yu Jonghyuk, and Yu Jonghyuk stared at me with a dreadful expression. The character Yu Jonghyuk is using 3 restraints LV. 10. Restraining oneself 3 times to avoid killing a person. I couldn't believe I was seeing Yu Jonghyuk use this skill in front of my eyes. It was difficult for me to tell how much of a grudge Yu Jonghyuk had against Anna Croft, even after reading Ways of Survival. I was struggling to make a decision when someone spoke. Anna, give him the gloves. Now is the time for us to yield. Anna Croft's expression hardened at Selena Kim's words. Selena Kim turned her head and sent a sound transmission to me. I am thankful for last time, Demon King of Salvation. Previously, I had released the pledge on Selena Kim through the bet with Anna Croft at the auction house. In other words, Selena Kim no longer had to listen to Anna Croft's commands. Anna Croft's expression when her greatest power opposed her opinion was worth seeing. Since Selena Kim threw out these words, it was my turn to finish it. It won't be for free. Then, I will buy it with coins. Anna Croft paused at the mention of coins. How about 500,000 coins? You probably lost some money at the auction house. Anna Croft's eyes narrowed. She seemed to be thinking about the losses she had suffered. After a while, Anna Croft opened her mouth. I will consider it for 1 million coins. It originally cost 200,000 coins. Isn't that too expensive? 600,000 coins. 900,000 coins. 700,000 coins. I can't compromise any further. I'll give it to you for 800,000 coins. Indeed, she was a formidable woman. 800,000 coins wasn't a small number, but the deal had to be made. The King Lycomed's leather gloves was an indispensable item for this whale hunting. King Lycomed's leather gloves has been acquired. You have paid 800,000 coins to Incarnation Anna Croft. The deal was over and I smiled. There is no harm to each other. No harm to each other. Have you already forgotten that you took 1 million coins from me? There are still 200,000 coins. Come to South Korea once. You can enjoy a 200,000 one-course meal. Of course, 200,000 won and 200,000 coins were different. Anna Croft gritted her teeth angrily. Do you really intend to fight with Poseidon? You have seen it with future sight, so you will know. That. Of course, I knew she didn't know the future. Her future sight couldn't see the futures associated with me. I brushed past her and added in a small voice, maybe this time will be pretty fun. You will go to a future that you can't read. I watched Anna Croft's quivering small head and felt a strange sense of triumph. I didn't know why I wanted to bully this person every time I met her. I hope you won't die a dog's death. If you really want that, ask Asgard to add some probability. After finishing the conversation, I glanced at Yu Jonghyuk. He was still glaring at Anna Croft and seemed on the verge of swinging his sword straight away. The moment I was about to open midday tryst, Yu Jonghyuk unexpectedly sent me a message first. That woman's neck belongs to me, no matter when it happens. Whatever you like. Of course, at that time, I didn't intend to stop it. However, at least until then, Anna Croft was a person we needed. Dionysus raised his hand. What do I do? Don't do anything. What? I left Dionysus and glanced at the giant soldier. Pluto was raising his body in the seawater. I asked Yu Jonghyuk, can you burn for 2 people? You're not satisfied with 1 and want me to do 2. Can you do it? Will you care if I say I can't? As the 2 myth-grade constellations clashed, the true voices of the constellations came from the sky. They stopped fighting and voiced their opinions on the current situation instead of pointing their weapons at each other. I didn't think Hades would show up here. How can we stop them? Athena, haven't you won a fight with Uncle Poseidon before? Isn't that another story? I just planted an olive tree. How can I win against a myth grade? I don't know if the lightning throne or Mother Earth appears. The expressions of the 12 gods were dark. The lightning throne neglected the work of the nebula after entering the top-level scenario, while Mother Earth hated Olympus and was unlikely to interfere in this incident. Hermes, what about using the giant stories of Olympus? They are the chief narrators of our giant story. Do you think it will work? That's true. There were comments here and there, but a solution didn't come out. Li Xiaohua observed the conversation between constellations and whispered in Li Hyunsung's ears. I thought narrative-grade constellations would be great, but they're more ordinary than I thought. Yes. Then what should we do now, if the constellations are like this? There was no confidence in Li Xiaohua's voice. In the meantime, Kim Dokja's company worked hard. It was natural to become confident after training and progressing. However, now they weren't dealing with great-grade or narrative-grade constellations. The stories they built couldn't even compare to the toes of these enormous beings. Shin Yusung muttered in a small voice. It was really had to beat that Sun Ajasi last time. Surya had 2 eyes closed and was watching the scene through the 3rd eye on his forehead. Even Surya, the strongest sun god, remained silent without interrupting. He was also unable to confront the myth-grade constellations. Shockwaves spread. The clashes between Poseidon and Hades became more frequent and cracks spread in the sky. The space itself was collapsing from the collision. In addition, the more serious thing. Uncle Hades will lose. It can't be helped. This stage is the sea. Complicated expressions appeared on the faces of the 12 gods, Poseidon or Hades. No matter who won, Olympus would fall into the crucible of confusion. At this moment, Surya opened his mouth. Something is coming. Someone had penetrated the expanse and was quickly approaching this way. It was a giant soldier made of the skin of a black dragon. Li Giliung shouted, Dokja Hyung. There was a loud exhaust sound and the giant soldier stopped. Kim Dokja emerged from inside Pluto. Everyone, I'll explain it briefly. Kim Dokja slowly looked at the constellations and incarnations. I'm going to make a sacred torch. For that, I need your help. Suddenly, the 12 gods glanced at each other. A true voice burst out. A sacred torch relay. Indeed, why didn't I think of that? The voices spoke until Kim Dokja once again opened his mouth. The 12 gods, please don't do anything. What do you mean? You belong to Olympus and have no way to resist Poseidon's giant story. If you participate in the torch relay, it can be counterproductive. Kim Dokja's words were true and some constellations nodded. However, it wasn't everyone. If we don't help, how can we turn on the sacred fire? In the first place, the sacred torch was a light that came from the sun. In order to start the sacred light, the help of the sun was needed. Then Surya quietly stood up. Kim Dokja gazed at him. Surya, sit down too. Surya sat down again. How will you make a sacred torch without the sun? The sacred fire is about sanctification. It isn't turned on only by the sun. The constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is shrugging. Looking back, Yong Hee-won's body was held tightly by Li Hyunsung, who had triggered steel transformation. Li Hyunsung's cheeks were red, although it was unknown if this was due to embarrassment or the flames of Hell Flame's ignition. To Huwoot. I'm sorry, please endure it a bit more. Surya nodded at the sight. The flames of Eden are enough to replace the sun's heat. However, the flames made from that sanctification will find it hard to pierce through Poseidon's waves. I know, thus it is time for you to step up. Surya rose from where he was sitting. Interesting. I needed more time before Li Hyunsung was heated enough by the flames, so I sat on the giant soldier's shoulder and gave some instructions to the group members. Then I looked around and saw Han Soo-young dangling her legs while sucking candy. I scolded Han Soo-young, is it delicious? Strangely, I've been craving something sweet lately. Do you want to eat? Han Soo-young didn't wait for my answer and shoved the candy she was holding into my mouth. It had a lemon flavor. I ate the candy and Han Soo-young looked at me quietly. By the way, that's what I was eating. So, you are really no fun. Han Soo-young slid down from the shoulder of the giant soldier and landed on its palm. I looked around and everyone also had a candy in their mouths, even Yu Jonghyuk. Lee Xiaohua said, Soo-young SSI gave them away. I heard it has a relaxing effect. That's why they were all biting one. I nodded in a convinced manner and Lee Xiaohua asked, can we win? I looked up and slowly gazed at Lee Xiaohua. Lee Xiaohua was looking back. I just smiled because I had no answer. Victory or defeat, I didn't know such a thing, just. No one will die. Finally, the steel sword was preheated by the sacred flames, and the torch was held in Pluto's hand. I opened my mouth while boarding Pluto. Please gather together. One by one, the scattered party members gathered. People born in different places and had different perspectives were gathered here. Thus, they became a constellation of people. The giant story, Demon World Spring, has begun. All the narrators of Kim Dokja's company started their story. It is a story originating from a reader. The strongest and loneliest man in the world held his sword. The steel sword bore the inferno of hell and soared towards the high expanse. The history that we accumulated was gathering in the flames of the sacred torch. Our story was a giant story from outside Olympus. Thus, it was impossible for Poseidon to not be hurt by this force. From a distance, Poseidon noticed the message and looked this way. He laughed and covered the air with waves, like a barrier. He was confident that the barrier made with the power of a myth-grade constellation couldn't be pierced. It was possible to know just by facing him. Kim Dokja's company couldn't pierce that barrier with our current power. We needed more power and a faster speed, a momentum strong enough to break through that wall. Finally, there was an assistant to provide that momentum to us. The giant story, Demon World Spring, has expanded. The sound of a train horn was heard from somewhere. Stage transformation has occurred. Thus, the bright sun illuminated their way. The train that was once our enemy was now rushing through the sky to pick us up. The sun train emitted a dazzling golden aura, and the party members looked up with ecstatic eyes. It was possible. If it was like this, it was clearly possible. Let's go, Kim Dokja's company. Chapter 338, End of the Myth 5. At this time, all temporary bureau members set up for the 60th scenario were looking at the same screen. The battle between myth-grade constellations was transmitted in real time. From low-grade to higher-grade docubus, they gathered regardless of their grade, forgetting their own channels scattered around various regions. Hades versus Poseidon. In the past few years, the number of times constellations fought such a bloody battle could be counted on the fingers of one hand. Of course, there were cases of powerful constellations confronting each other, but as always, it was about the story of the battle. A battle to defend their successors. Hades made a surprise declaration when he didn't have a successor for thousands of years, caused the constellations to explode. The vast majority of constellations are enthusiastic about the battle scene. The vast majority, even the advanced docubus like Bihyung, had never seen such a cluster of constellations. The Demon King, ruler of the East Hell, is enthusiastic about the battle. The Demon King, devil of principles, is burning with the motivation to participate in the scenario. The constellation, savior of corruption, is watching the battle with mad eyes. The constellation, scribe of heaven, is looking at the battlefield with terrible eyes. The rumor spread quickly, and the constellations started to gather together, no matter if they were good or evil. The constellation, great mother god who created man out of earth, is watching the battle. The constellation, god king of thunder, is interested in the war of Olympus. The constellation, founder of Reincarnation, is rejoicing. From the Nebula Emperor to Vedas and Goddess Island, the constellations of China, India and Ireland were gathered together to observe the battle of myth-grade constellations. The subscribers of the channel skyrocketed, and the Bureau was busy capturing the remaining probability to sustain the scenario and maintain the channels. There was no way the Bureau could miss such an opportunity. As the balance slowly tilted, the reaction of the constellations became hotter. It was predicted that one myth would end here today. In the place where one myth fell, a new story that never existed would bloom like a flower. Unlike the other Dakibis who were full of excitement and passion, Bihyung was in a state of uneasiness. That bastard, what the hell is he doing? On the screen, Kim Dokja was moving. Giant soldier Pluto was holding the steel sword who had been heated up. The steel sword shone like a giant torch in the sun of ancient Greek. Dokgek opened his mouth. Crazy, they're trying a sacred torch relay. All the Dakibis were streamers. A curious Dakibai asked Dokgek, "A sacred torch relay, what is it?" "Do you know the torch that burns with flames in the myths?" "I know. The sacred torch relay is the ceremony of peace and victory. They are declaring that they will end this war through that fire." After Dokgek's explanation, the Dakibis opened their mouths. Crazy, joining that battlefield now. The Demon King of Salvation was also famous among the Dakibis, the master of the new nebula, Kim Dokja's company, the beloved Demon King of Archangels, the rule of the 73rd Demon Realm, a returnee who survived the fight against the indescribable distance, received the favor of an outer god, and even crossed to another world. Even if it is him this time. He is a foolhardy man. In the middle of this, one Dakibai was laughing. Ha 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 ha. It was Bihyung. Some of the Dakibis looked puzzled, but Bihyung continued to laugh. He had a thought. Perhaps none of the Dakibis here would understand his feelings. The members of Kim Dokja's company who carried the torch of revolution. They were perceived as moths flying towards the flames. However, he knew the stories they had accumulated. The difficulties given to them had varying sizes, but they were always in the realm of impossibility. Yes, this is Kim Dokja. Bihyung watched the constellation drawn by Kim Dokja's company and was reminded of a history not long ago. The first time he met Kim Dokja on the subway, the moment he made the exclusive contract with Kim Dokja, who was weak but calm. The stories piled up like snowflakes. There was something unbelievable. It was something he saw for the first time. A trivial human who built up his stories and became a constellation, finally reaching the starting point of a single story. Streamer Bihyung had watched it all. Dokgek opened his mouth. He will fail this time. Maybe so. You are composed. Isn't this the constellation you contracted with? He used to be, but not anymore. Bihyung laughed. He didn't know if Kim Dokja's strategy would succeed or not, but strangely, he had a streamer's hunch. Kim Dokja's story wouldn't end here. The giant story, Demon World Spring, has expanded. Along with the system messages, the Dakibis' eyes widened. A golden train was flying through the sky. It was Surya's golden train. That, if they were told about what would happen in the 60th scenario, who would have believed it? If it is this, maybe. The cooperation between humans and gods. A single story, the torch of sanctification, was leading the way to success. The train descended like a yellow dragon and the Dakibis gulped. Why? They watched the reckless, absurd, and impossible challenge. Yet why were the streamers' hearts burning? Perhaps Dokgek was right. The attack might fail and this nebula might become dust in the star stream. Nevertheless, the great Dakibai Halong is watching the 60th scenario. The great Dakibai Halong is watching the 60th scenario. The great Dakibai Baram is watching the end of the 60th scenario. At this moment, all Dakibis were thinking the same thing. I also want to make such a scenario. The story of the constellations was growing on the grounds of the scenario. The constellations who grew up eating the stories dreamt of another story. This was the power of the star stream. The overwhelmed Bihyung exclaimed, They are the ones I raised, do you all know? What made a good story? What scenario was a good scenario? There was no Dakibai who knew the answer. If anyone knew, it would be the Dakibai king. However, the Dakibis knew one thing. It was the fact that perhaps their king would also be watching this story. The head of the falling train finally crashed into the waves. The surprised Poseidon's eyes widened. The status of the narrative-grade constellation advanced and entered into Poseidon's waves. Even so, the walls of the waves were still rough and thick. Next is me. The woman who dreams of another apocalypse is starring her story. Han Soo-young moved along the edge of the train and released her bandages to create black flames. Han Soo-young's formidable black flames took the form of a dragon. She had already reached such a point. The shape of the dragon moved forward and tore through the waves. Li Jihai followed. The wounded swordsman raised her sword to protect her relationships. The key ring on Li Jihai's sword shone as she raised it like a commander. At almost the same time, a fleet appeared on the wall of waves. The ghost fleet fired through the passage made by the black dragon. Poseidon called his flagship, as Yi Sun-sen's bombardment prevented the waves from filling back up. However, Poseidon couldn't afford to worry about this. Hades had regained his momentum and aimed for his neck with the scythe of the underworld. Behind the bombardment, giant soldier Pluto took a sprinting posture in the rear of the train. Shin Yusung declared, "Depart Ajasi." The inertia of the train added to Pluto's speed. The wind attribute of the Chimera dragon amplified the speed even further. Go Dokja Hyung. Along with Li Giliung's cheer, Pluto started the dash. Pluto held the steel sword in both hands while Jung Heewon supplied hellfire to it. Hayat! Li Hyunsung bellowed, and Pluto flew through the sky. The giant story, Demon World Spring, is continuing the story. The giant story, Supreme Ruler of the Open Seas, is continuing. Stories and stories clashed and Pluto's gloves were torn off. Kim Nam-woon screamed with pleasure despite the pain. The steel giant who returned from hell swung his sword. The flames of hell burned up the steel. The sword that burned with hellfire and the stories of all the other members. The flames of the torch vaporized many water walls at once. The myth-rated barrier that seemed impossible to penetrate was being broken. Beyond the broken waves, the defenseless Theseus could be seen. In the situation where victory was in front of his eyes, Pluto didn't move. The world shook like it was reversed, and I vomited up blood inside Pluto. In the meantime, Poseidon had thrown Trojana, and it pierced Pluto's waist. It was the exact place where I was riding. Dokja Sesai. Jung Heewon's voice was faintly heard. The power of the star relic Trojana is fatally injured your incarnation body. The status is a power you can't afford. The giant soldier Pluto has offset some of your shock. This was the majesty of a myth-grade constellation. It could trample on a narrative-grade constellation like me as if I was a worm. The waves had been pierced, but the flames of the torch were cooling down. Li Hyunsung seemed stunned, and Jung Heewon's magic power was almost running out. The waves were showing signs of recovery again. Poseidon was still relaxed as he dealt with Hades. There was a faint smile. Maybe he thought he won. Towards that Poseidon I laughed. As always, the protagonist was the last to attack. Yu Jonghyuk. Behind the torch that was dying out, a man in a black coat was running with everyone's stories on his back. The surprised Poseidon created a water spear, but Red Phoenix Shunpo quickly avoided it. Some spears that couldn't be stopped pierced Yu Jonghyuk's thighs and shoulders. The item Giant's Armor is effective. The armor that contained the power of the giants barely protected Yu Jonghyuk from the sacred spears. 1 step, 2 step, 3 steps. As the number of spears that stabbed it increased, the giant's armor started to crumble. Then it shattered. With 10 steps left, Poseidon's status rushed towards Yu Jonghyuk. Yu Jonghyuk's expression hardened. This was a power that a regressor of the third round couldn't afford. Just a bit more, just a little bit further. Theseus was right in front of our noses. Kim Dokja. Yu Jonghyuk in my vision became a bit blurry. I knew from the beginning that it was unreasonable. It wasn't possible for Yu Jonghyuk to go to the place where Theseus was located. The exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, has been activated. Then what if he was the third round? Your blurred consciousness has been partially liberated from the constraints of your body. Exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint Stage 3 has been activated. Once again, the landscape I saw had changed. The first-person protagonist's point of view has been activated. It was the very landscape that Yu Jonghyuk saw. Kim Dokja. Yu Jonghyuk's thoughts seemed confused. Poseidon's spear was moving. I felt time slowing as I turned over the pages of ways of survival in my head. The third round couldn't finish this. However, I eagerly imagined what would be possible someday. The story, Hell of Eternity, has begun. The fourth round, the fifth round, the sixth round, the 41st round, the 56th round. This round can't be understood with your reading comprehension. Pain came over me and my bloodshot eyes seemed like they were going to explode. The explosive stories were a mess in my head. Still, I didn't give up. The fourth wall is protecting your spirit. Your reading comprehension is moving towards new possibilities. The pages you can't read are opening. Countless curious eyes were on us. They weren't constellations. Yu Jonghyuk muttered this. The Yu Jonghyuk of the other rounds were watching us. Some looked envious while others had gloomy expressions. Finally, there was one with an expression of intrigue. Interesting. I quickly moved through the pages and reached the maximum I could turn over now. Thus, I finally used the future ahead of me. You have reached the maximum number of rounds you can read. The maximum number of times you can read Yu Jonghyuk is up to the 362nd round. The 362nd round Yu Jonghyuk. This was the last card I could bring out. The 362nd round Yu Jonghyuk wasn't strong enough to kill Poseidon. In order to do that, the number of regressions must be 1,700 times. Thanks to the influence of first-person protagonist's point of view, the talent of Yu Jonghyuk of this round is passed on to others. The talent of 362nd round Yu Jonghyuk is attracted to Yu Jonghyuk. However, the 362nd round Yu Jonghyuk was strong enough. It was because the 362nd round Yu Jonghyuk. It has been a while, Poseidon. It was the Yu Jonghyuk who fought against Poseidon for the first time. At that time, I killed your son. Poseidon's furious roar was heard. The 362nd round Yu Jonghyuk moved inside Yu Jonghyuk of the third round. It was a stance that he took 10 million times. This is palm boxing. Yu Jonghyuk's breaking the Skyforce punch break through the final barrier and pierce Theseus' body. TL, Rainbow Turtle. I also made a small correction to the last chapter. Pluto was raising his body in the seawater. I asked him while nodding towards Yu Jonghyuk, "Can you pick up two people?" Chapter 339, End of the Myth 6. The character Yu Jonghyuk has used breaking the Skyforce punch LV. The skill level of this person can't be converted to a numerical value. The skill is strengthened abnormally due to the power of the story. Theseus' right arm was destroyed by Yu Jonghyuk's breaking the Skyforce punch and floated in the water. Theseus watched this with a blank expression. I felt sorry for him who didn't do anything wrong. However, as long as Poseidon had descended into Theseus' body, getting rid of Theseus was the only way to expel the myth-grade constellation from the scenario. The next moment, sparks appeared around Yu Jonghyuk's entire body. Some Dokibus are doubting the probability of the story. The incarnation body of the character can't bear the skill. As expected, he might have the talent of the 362nd round Yu Jonghyuk, but this was the body of the third round. It was insufficient to break Poseidon's barrier and destroy Theseus' flesh. The power of the item, King Lycomed's leather gloves, is triggered. There was an item that would bridge this gap. It was the very item I had purchased from Anna Croft. Stage transformation is triggered by the effect of King Lycomed's leather gloves. King Lycomedes was a figure known as the murderer of Theseus in mythology. Theseus' complexion changed. Nevertheless, Theseus stepped forward instead of retreating. He unfolded his arms as if begging to be killed. Theseus. The moment Poseidon's wrathful true voice was heard, Yu Jonghyuk's breaking the sky force punch struck again. The constellation, abandoned lover of the labyrinth, is grieving. I saw Theseus looking down at his heart and then looking at Yu Jonghyuk, or perhaps me. In the last moment, there was a relieved smile on Theseus' face. The incarnation body of the constellation, hero of the labyrinth, has completely disappeared. It was just the death of the incarnation body, and he wouldn't disappear completely. Still, Theseus would be so damaged that he couldn't do any scenario activities for the time being. Theseus threw his body to complete this scenario, despite knowing all of that. Olympus leaders have all died. The scenario clear conditions have been met. Calculating the contribution of individual incarnations and constellations. First-person protagonist's point of view has been released. I coughed up blood as I returned to my body again. Inside the broken Pluto, Kim Nemwoon's voice was heard. The calling has stopped, Grasshopper. Bye. Pluto's summoning time ended and he was returned to the underworld. At the same time, a massive storm of water swept over the area where Theseus' incarnation body had died. Poseidon, who had descended in Theseus' body, was running wild. In the midst of the spraying water, the incarnation struggled for breath. A portion of Poseidon's status was pouring towards the defenseless Yu Jonghyuk. It wasn't an attack that could be avoided by Yu Jonghyuk, who was seriously damaged and turned to rags thanks to the talent of the 362nd round. I shouted, Hades. I understand. Hades appeared in the air with Kaine, holding Yu Jonghyuk in his arms. Poseidon's spear only crashed into the depths of the deep sea. This wasn't the end. Cracks spread rapidly around the area where Triana was stabbed. The cracks started to suck up everything around it like a vacuum cleaner. Unfortunately, I was also included in the things to be cleaned. My damaged incarnation body didn't have the strength to resist this suction. I stretched out my hand as I was being swept away by the torrents. However, there was no one to grab my hand. That's what I thought. Dr. Sasai. You idiot. Hair scattered beautifully in the water. Lee Xiaohua swam like a mermaid and grabbed my left arm, while Han Suyong followed her and grabbed my right arm. The two people stopped my bleeding with hit a pressure point and pulled me up with all their strength. I saw Han Suyong swimming desperately in order to get away from the crack in the deep sea. Shortly thereafter, we emerged safely from the water. Hey up. Kim Dokcha, you crazy guy. The main scenario will close soon. Rather than replying to Han Suyong, I watched the currents. If my prediction was correct, Poseidon lost his incarnation body and would be forced to return. The constellation Spear that parts the boundaries of the sea is roaring. However, the situation went differently than expected. Poseidon's power was becoming stronger instead of weakening. Ajasi. It seemed that the party members perceived something was wrong. The Bureau is urging the spear that parts the boundaries of the sea to withdraw. Poseidon didn't disappear despite the Bureau's recommendation. The situation was obvious. In a scenario that already ended, there were no justifications for his actions. The Bureau is preparing sanctions for the spear that parts the boundaries of the sea to withdraw. Fortunately, the Bureau seemed to be doing its job properly. I watched the boiling and seething sea. The question was what Poseidon would do until the sanctions were imposed. A little further away, Hades and Persephone were watching this side. Many constellations are condemning spear that parts the boundaries of the sea. Up. My mind seemed to go blank from the true voice. In the distance, a tsunami was approaching. It was a wave hundreds of meters high. Crazy, what is that? Poseidon is crazy. The incarnations belatedly tried to flee, but it was too late. Some of them, including the giants, were swept away by the first wave. It was a giant wave of water that no one could resist. I looked at Hades, but Hades didn't move. The reason he didn't come forward was obvious. Hades had exactly the same idea as me. We simultaneously looked up at the sky. No matter how disinterested you are in Olympus, you can't just watch this time. The Bureau is giving probability to someone. The next moment, the color of the sky changed. A light that seemed to paralyze sight and hearing filled the sky. The light seemed to make the world disappear. It was a little while later that I realized it was a very large lightning bolt. The lightning tore through the waves. It was strong enough to split the sea into two and burn the ground of the deep sea. I heard Poseidon's last roar before he disappeared. The constellation Spear that parts the boundaries of the sea has exited the scenario. It was an incredible sight. Nevertheless, it really happened. The constellation Lightning Throne is looking down at Olympus. No matter how many of the 12 gods there were, they didn't dare to face him. The moment the indirect message came up, all the gods of Olympus froze in place. It was the same for the insolent Dionysus and the virtuous Athena and Artemis. The gaze of the sky slowly turned to the king of the underworld. The underground and sky faced each other. As if this conversation was enough, Hades wore Kine and disappeared from the scenario. The constellation, father of the rich knight, has exited the scenario. Persephone disappeared while winking at me. We'll meet again soon, our cute son. 2 of the 3 chief gods had disappeared, but the tension wasn't diminished. There was the sound of the world moving as the scales of probability once again tilted. It was clear who the Bureau had given probability to. King of Olympus, Zeus, the only one in Olympus who had reached the last scenario. No constellation other than Zeus could eject Poseidon and cause this reaction in the constellations. In fact, BU's channel had a festive atmosphere. The Dakibai of the Bureau has recalled the probability given to the Lightning Throne. The Bureau is recommending for the Lightning Throne to withdraw. A festival was called a festival because it was short. If Zeus stayed in the sub-scenario for a long time, he would harm the balance of the star stream. It might bring about a disaster like indescribable distance last time. Even so, Zeus was arrogant. Don't rush me. I didn't come at your request. I came to see my seeds. The sky of Olympus looked down at the 12 gods. The 12 gods who came here were tense in front of Zeus' gaze. Yet they are still only garbage. At Zeus' words, the 12 gods sat down like they had received a great shock. Dionysus' shoulders were trembling. He was a narrative-grade constellation, but Dionysus couldn't resist at all. Some stories were like this. They accumulated for a long time and couldn't resist ending. The clouds in the sky were lifted and Zeus' status became blurred. Like a farmer turning his back to barren ground, Zeus was leaving the scenario. Some of the 12 gods muttered, even his children. At this moment, a small stone flew towards the sky. It was the stone I threw. The stone in the air was destroyed by the sparks of probability. The constellation, Lightning Throne, is looking at you. I felt a powerful status surrounding my body, but I just glared at the sky. In any case, the probability allowed to Zeus was over. The constellation, Lightning Throne, has exited the scenario. I looked back at the 12 gods. Why are you just listening to his words? You. The moment Dionysus was going to spear, a message poured from the sky. No, it wasn't a message. Dionysus, the 12 gods, and even me, we looked up at the sky where Zeus had disappeared. White snow was falling like stars. The snow was irrelevant to Zeus, who ruled the sky. It was the power of a constellation who existed perhaps even longer than Zeus. It was the existence of light who ruled the first sky before Olympus was made. Like a lonely island, Briareus and the giants howled as they watched the falling snow. Main Scenario 60, Giganomatia has ended. Sub-scenario, Myth Subversion has been completed. The compensation settlement will begin. The constellations of the world were watching me. Apart from the 4 main constellations, there were constellations I knew and those I didn't know. Dionysus spoke, "You won, Kim Daksha." The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint and other giants used their big bodies like ships to carry us. Yu Jonghyuk and Han Soo-young were looking in at the sky in different directions. Yong Hee-won and Lee Hyun-sung helped each other, while Lee Seol-hwa clasped her hands tightly together. Lee Ji-hai was wiping her tears while embracing Shin Yu-sung and Lee Gil-young. Maybe they were listening to the system messages too. You have acquired a new giant story. 3 additional new stories have been acquired. It was a really long-prepared plan. I was able to see the things that would happen in the future, as if I was reading a novel with a definite ending. Your second giant story has completed the success portion. The second condition of the hidden scenario, a single story, has been fulfilled. Finally, the awaited success greeted me. The nebula Kim Dokja's company has become well known in the star stream. A system message celebrating our victory widely resonated in the universe. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is raising his rod. The constellation Black Dragon of the Abyss is waving the bandages of liberation. The constellation Secretive Plotter is nodding. The constellation Demon-like Judge of Fire is proud of you. The constellations in my channel were congratulating me. Some of the constellations of the last scenario are paying attention to you. Then beings of the last scenario, like Zeus, started to notice me. The demon kings of the demon world are paying attention to your actions. The archangels of Eden are paying attention to you. Unknown gods of another world are staring at your existence. The seekers of the end are listening to your story. In the midst of the white and snowy sea, good and evil and those who didn't belong to either side were watching the story. The end of the myth that had long dominated the world. Those who made the story with me would find me. Kim Dokja. However, at this moment, Kim Dokja, I already wasn't there. Chapter 340, A Road That Isn't a Road 1. Immediately after the collapse of Olympus in Gigantomachia, the restrictions on the giants disappeared. They were freed from the old story and would be reborn as participants in new scenarios. There is no desire to repeat the old battle. Do you agree? I agree. Briareus, leader of the giants, and Dionysus, interim representative of the 12 gods, reached a dramatic agreement just before the end of the 60th scenario. The star stream has acknowledged this myth collapse. A new story is blooming in the 60th scenario. In fact, they could have fought more if they wanted to fight. However, the power of Olympus had been drastically weakened through Gigantomachia. Many heroes and giants died, Poseidon's whereabouts were unclear, and the silent underworld king announced his successor. In such a situation, the existence of the nebula would be jeopardized if the 12 gods and giants were to keep confronting each other. The downfall of the giant nebula, Olympus. At the center of this ridiculous story, there was a small nebula. A number of constellations are shouting the name, Kim Dokja's company. The story, which began with the struggle of a small constellation, was finally coming to the end with a giant story. Despite this, the members of the nebula didn't appreciate the giant story and were calling someone's name. Dokja Sasai, Dokja Sasai. Hyung, don't mess around. Where are you hiding? Yong Hee-won, Lee Hyun-sung, Lee Ji-hai, Lee Gil-young, Shin Yu-sung. They were looking for Kim Dokja on the small island made by the giants. Someone sounded uneasy, while another had an expression full of disbelief. The only one who remained calm in this chaos was the one staring up at the sky with an expressionless face. Han Soo-young stared closely at him and asked, Yu Jonghyuk, do you know something? Answer me, the kids are worried. Yu Jonghyuk slowly turned towards Han Soo-young. The party members noticed something and gathered behind Han Soo-young. Master, what is it? Do you know something? What happened to Dokja Sasai again? Yu Jonghyuk was silent for a while before replying. Kim Dokja has returned to Earth. What, without us? Lee Ji-hai belatedly discovered something and opened her mouth. Ah, don't tell me. In retrospect, Gigantomachia wasn't their real purpose. In the beginning, participating in Gigantomachia was only a process. While everyone was feeling excited by the joy of victory, only Kim Dokja was thinking about the real purpose of this task. Yong Hee-won sighed with relief and smiled. Still, he didn't have to quickly go back on his own. We'll go back too. Then a system message emerged. The region will be restricted for 1 hour to stabilize the scenario. Lee Seol's eyes widened with surprise. How did Dr. SSI get out of here? He probably used a special method. A special method? I don't know anything else. Yu Jonghyuk replied and stared up at the sky again. It was still snowing. Snow was falling in summer weather. Based on Earth tie, it was snowing in August. Han Soo-young stared into his eyes and asked him, did Kim Dokja go back first because of Yu Sanga? There was a reason for asking what should have been obvious. Yu Jonghyuk's answer came back after the miraculous snow melted in the sun. You'll know when you see it. In the vehicle that ran in dimensions, I was lost in thoughts. During the time when I was planning to overthrow Gigantomachia, I had contacted several constellations. Perhaps all those with the slightest acquaintance received my call. Most of them were in a special relationship with Olympus, or were in a difficult position to participate in the 60th scenario. I could understand. What constellation would want to be in a hostile relationship with a big nebula like Olympus? Nevertheless, there was one who made a unique suggestion. I can't help in Gigantomachia, but if you fail, I can pave the way for you to get away. It can only be you. The one who made the suggestion was now sitting in the driver's seat and holding the steering wheel. I didn't know you would take advantage of my proposal in this way. The owner of the special Ferrari genie, who could use the portals of the scenario because of his probability, and who had free access to the dimension. The mass production maker laughed. Originally, you were a type who rarely asked for help from someone else. My thoughts are a bit different after coming back from another world. I smiled and added, in addition, I accidentally left the X-grade Ferrari genie behind. I haven't finished the installment plan yet, so I'm still crying whenever I think about it. Haha, the car you bought from me. Thus, in the future, I have decided to ride in other people's cars without driving my own. It is a disappointing decision from a seller's position. This time, a new model came out, and I was going to give you a free one. For free? I'm lying. I knew it. There was no way this constellation would see any losses. The mass production maker seemed to think of something as he held a cigarette in his mouth. The scattered smoke was sucked into the vents installed before it could reach me in the passenger's seat. I want to make a contract with your nebula. Contract? Do you know what you've done this time? I knew I could not know. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth is flowing through your veins. It was because even now, the result of what I had done was flowing through the veins in my body. Torch that swallowed the myth. This story wasn't the one who erases God's fingerprints or person who closes the door of a myth that I had originally intended to obtain. Still, its essence was similar. The story of fighting against a great nebula and overthrowing myths. This story would be a counter for the numerous nebulae I would fight in the future. Many constellations have come to know of Kim Dokja's company. Yes, some of them even claim that you should put your nebula in one of the 12 great nebulae. The 12 great nebulae. I didn't realize I was already in a position to hear this story. The 12 great nebulae dominating the star stream consisted of 3 strong, 4 medium, and 5 weak ones. Olympus, who was located between the 3 strong and 4 medium ones, was greatly upset this time, and someone had to fill that space. There are many hasty stars. They are always like this. Then the mass production maker wants to take advantage of this opportunity to sign a contract with my nebula. That's right. There was no hesitation in the mass production maker's answer. I'd like to leave this new product's advertisement to your nebula. That's good. I will ask the members of my nebula. Great. The incarnation I want to appear personally is. I listened to the mass production maker while staring out the window of the scenes passing by the Ferrari genie. The seasons of the myriad of stories flowed through the landscape. The seasons of numerous stories flowed in the passing landscape. That's right, suddenly. It is fast. As I spoke, I subconsciously grabbed the bottle of star fluid in my pocket. I had come this far faster than any of the original rounds, yet this speed was only a relative speed. I didn't know if this was fast enough. The mass production maker laughed and said, "This new product is a bit faster. You will know if you drive it yourself, but the driving sensation is very. The time is too slow compared to the driving speed. Are you doing this intentionally to talk about the contract?" What are you talking about? I am going the fastest way. Look, it is already the last intersection." As the mass production maker said, there were 3 portals emitting a white light on the other side of the dimension. I didn't ask, but the mass production maker explained. One is the road to Earth, and the other is the road to the context of the constellations. What is the last one? A road that looks like a road. The mass production maker smiled significantly. It was much darker than other portals and gave off a shady vibe. Do you know what is at the end? Of course, I didn't know. I might have read Ways of Survival, but there wasn't a description of all the portals in the dimension. In other words, this portal was a road that didn't exist in Ways of Survival. What is it? It's nothing, it is just a blocked road. The answer came back like it was obvious. Before I could say anything, the mass production maker continued. The end of some roads. The road that looks different from other roads. It is a road that no one walked or a road that isn't even a road. The Ferrarigini sped past the dark portal. The sparkling navigation system was showing the route to Earth. On the screen, the portal we had just gone past was marked as no road. Such roads are usually cut off in obscure places. The people who chose to walk along the path believe it is the end. What is your meaning? Please choose your path well. The mass production maker put out the cigarette and gave his distinctly gentle smile. Sometimes the thing that looks like a road isn't a road. The next moment, the landscape of the dimension changed. I saw the appearance of the blue planet and landed on the ground. The mass production maker told me, "We've arrived. Fortunately, this time it is good." The moment I arrive in Seoul, I naturally headed to the factory. It was to the hospital ward where patients were admitted. The moment I stepped into the ward, I heard a voice that was close to a true voice. "You came." It sounded like a true voice, but it wasn't a true voice. It was a voice where the dignity of a transcendent could be heard. A blue-white magic power filled the air. As expected, every teacher wanted to look good in front of their student. "This poor disciple is greeting you." "There is no time. Leave the greetings for later. Go." Perhaps it was the aftermath of the returnees' war, but Kyuji's had bandages wrapped around his body. "The heavenly demon and blood demon. I killed them. Don't talk to me and go quickly." I was amazed by the calm declaration. He survived the heavenly demon and blood demon who killed the breaking the sky sword saint in a past life. I didn't realize my teacher in this round was so strong. Aileen found me in the distance and came running. She was the only story expert in the factory. If she wasn't here, 2 of the party members would have already died. I waved the star fluids and shouted, "I brought the star fluid." You haven't been told yet, but..." "I already know." In the distance, 2 red rooms could be seen. One was the hospital room of Yu Sanga and the other. "How is my mother?" "Her symptoms are almost the same as Yu Sanga." "The severity of the symptoms?" "More or less the same level." I knew that my mother had been overworking herself. The stigma, giant future, placed a great burden on the user's body. Moreover, the contract with the nebula itself was in an obscure form, and the burden increased even more after my mother's sponsor lost strength. Aileen took the star fluids from me and spoke in a dark voice. "I think it is lacking. That's why I have 2 bottles. They are different types. I didn't bring only 1 star fluid. There was the nectar from Dionysus, as well as the soma I was originally supposed to receive from Surya." Aileen's expression glowed as she received the 2 bottles of star fluids. "Medical staff." The staff rushed at her signal towards the 2 hospital rooms. Someone brushed past me, and the wound in my side caused by Poseidon throbbed. My vision blurred for a moment. I might need to receive treatment. No, it would be strange to be fine after being hit by a myth-grade constellation. I worked hard to hide the pain from the wound. My consciousness was unstable. The doors to the hospital rooms seemed like the entrance to the portal that the mass production maker had shown me. "Are you okay?" Kyojios flew through the air and asked me. I replied that I was fine. To be exact, it felt like I answered, but I lost consciousness for a while. Once I woke up, I was lying on a chair in the ward. Aileen was standing in front of me. I endured the pain and stood up. "What happened to the two people?" I immediately asked despite my blurred consciousness. However, Aileen's expression was strange. "It isn't enough." "It isn't enough what?" "The two of them worsened faster than I thought. I can barely cure one person if I use both star fluids." I couldn't understand the words. Aileen's words sounded like faraway alien words, like she was an outer god. What do you mean?" "Demon King of Salvation." Aileen formally called out my modifier. She only called me this when she needed my orders. The two rooms were wide open, like a portal waiting for me. "You can only save one person."